you had like decades where you had maybe like one new model presented and so on. And just in the last 5 years, there's just another 20 new models for time series analysis that have just sort of appeared.
Let's hear from the experts about how artificial intelligence is transforming the world of business. I'm Katie Gaertner, and this is Unsupervised. Hey, Business Badgers. Today, I'm sitting with Enno Siemsen, an operations and technology management professor here at the Wisconsin School of Business. Enno earned his PhD in operations, technology, and innovation management from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And his latest research focuses on the use of augmented reality in manufacturing and on human judgment in sales and operations planning. So Enno, thanks for joining me. Let's talk about operations and AI.
Thank you so much, Katie. I'm excited and very happy to be here.
Great. So you're going to need to lay the groundwork for us first. What is operations and technology management, and why is it a major at the business school?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. I always say that it's one of those topics where, if you come into the business school, most people know what marketing is because, well, we've seen plenty of ads on TV, right? Mm-hmm. And most people know what finance is because we play Monopoly when we were kids, right? So, we sort of have an understanding of certain topics. Operations and technology management is maybe a little bit something that people are like, what's that? And to be fair, it is a pretty broad topic, but roughly speaking, I always say it's about getting things done in organizations, right? So somebody has to take care of, material has to flow from one point to the other. It has to be transformed. We need to make sure they have enough capacity. We need to put people into the right places and coordinate them, make sure that they understand what they need to do. And all of that is operations and technology management, right? It involves designing processes, designing supply chains, implementing technology, all of that in order to get work done in organizations.
Okay. So a student might ask, what's the difference between OTM and supply chain, for example?
Oh, that's a good question. First of all, I think I'm not a big fan of setting very clear boundaries between these two things.
Okay.
But very roughly speaking, in supply chain management, you deal with external organizations, right? It's not only that you have to get things done, but you need a lot of partner organizations who you depend upon.
Yeah.
And so supply chain management then deals with, how do we place our orders? How do we negotiate with them? How do we maintain relationships with them? How do we transport things from outside suppliers to our own, factories, et cetera, right? So that's more the topic of supply chain management. And then operations is kind of like a bit more of the internal perspective of how do we run things internally now that we get supplies from the outside, how do we transform them? And then how do we ship that out to our own customers, right? So that's sort of maybe a bit of a boundary, but this is fairly blurry, right?
Sure. Thanks for that clarification. So how do you see operation and technology management using AI?
Well, it is, a huge topic. First of all, I think AI has become an umbrella term, right?
Yes.
It's sort of what we used to call sort of business analytics, machine learning, and now sort of generative AI is all kind of lumped together in this big blob of AI. So I think the actual sort of generative AI applications are still relatively small. Mm-hmm. That's still kind of developing, but there are tremendous applications in sort of machine learning and business analytics that have maybe gotten a boost because everybody's interested now in AI and wants to sort of showcase AI implementations, right? So if you think about, any organizations, in the last 10 to 15 years, we've done a lot of what was called IoT, which means putting sensors into everything, right? Every machine now has a tremendous amount of data that it generates. And that means that all of your processes are highly, highly documented. There's a lot of sensory data that is sort of constantly being spit out. And if you want to react to that, well, you need data analysis techniques that can deal with that, right? So that's maybe for sort of manufacturing organizations, that's a huge topic, right? Mm-hmm. How do we take all of that data and really use it in a meaningful way so that we can, very early on detect if something is going wrong and intervene, that we can, very quickly, like if we know we have a problem over here, we can automatically inform our suppliers that we need in order to fix that and so on, right? So this level of sort of digitization and automation is really taking off. And in service organizations, right? So natural language processing, real-time natural language processing has become possible now, right? So in call centers, for example, you can, now monitor both the people that call customers as well as the customers and directly see how they react to things. And so then you can provide your own agents with real-time feedback of like, you need to speak slower, you're not friendly enough, right? And you can even customize that. You have a customer over here whom just wants information quickly, like just tell them very quickly what they need to know. Here you have a customer who likes to chat a little bit, so then you can tell your agents to chat a little bit, right? So you can create individualized profiles based on, the call history that you have with customers as well as the agents that you have, and provide your agents real-time feedback with respect to how they behave, right? I mean, that was not possible just a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And, that's I think tremendous. I mean, if you think about the work that we do, right? I mean, I'm waiting for the tools that allow us to automatically kind of read the room and see how many people in class are kind of, understanding what we're saying, or really puzzled, right? So I think sort of this way of providing humans with real-time feedback on the environment and how other people in the environment sort of perceive them is going to be super important for service organizations, right? So we're going to see more and more implementations on that. Call centers are the obvious first kind of part, right? But, think about your hotel check-in, think about your restaurant, think about all kinds of service operations that can benefit from, just understanding the emotional space that the customers are in.
That's really cool. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are some of the most exciting or transformative AI developments that you've observed in this operations and technology management space?
Yeah. One of my pet topics has always been forecasting, right? If you want to run any kind of organization, you need to predict the future and kind of understand what you're planning for, right? And I mean, we've had forecasting algorithms for the better part of 50 or 60 years, and some of them actually work pretty well, but with sort of the advent of machine learning and now AI, I can see a massive just amount of development in the public space, as well as, with many of the tech companies that, are really putting a lot of effort into building new models, not only using sort of neural networks in different levels, but also now using sort of transformer-based models. And I don't think there's sort of a clear winner there yet, but I feel like this has been just the last 5 years have been the most significant time period of development in this area. Just with my students, we did a whole module on machine learning and time series, and you had like decades where you had maybe like one new model presented and so on, and just in the last 5 years, there's just another 20 new models for time series analysis that have just sort of appeared, and so there is a real enthusiasm there in development, and I find that very exciting. And again, companies will benefit from it because the quality of forecasts, I think, is going to improve, and I think the technical capability of the people who will go into this field and help organizations with forecasting is going to improve, and so that's good. Companies will become more prepared, and that will lead to less and less errors and better plans.
Okay. So you research augmented reality in manufacturing. That's at least one of your many research interests. Tell me about that. What is augmented reality in manufacturing?
Okay, happy to talk about that. You really need to be careful about asking a faculty member about the research. But So I'm super excited about augmented reality. I'm waiting for the moment where these glasses over here will just have displays in here, and I could have my meeting notes prepared and they'd all be displayed somewhere over here, right? But and we've had this. Google Glass was one of the first ones that came out in, was it 2012 or so? Mm-hmm. It wasn't super successful, but on the industrial side, these AR goggles have actually, been implemented, been in use for quite some time. And it makes sense. I mean, if you think about going through a warehouse and you want to figure out where something is, well, the goggles will like pick it up over there, right? So, I mean, next time you go to IKEA, right, wouldn't it be great to just kind of walk through the aisles and be like, yeah, you just stop over here and pick up this stuff, right? So, so that's fairly straightforward. And for training purposes, and so if you think, what we looked at over here was a manufacturing organization that, very quickly introduced new products, right? So very relatively fast life cycles for their products, which meant you had to constantly train people. And, training traditionally would be done with like, here's your booklet, figure it out, right? And we wanted to understand what happens when you, instead of having sort of your booklet, you have your step-by-step instructions displayed in the goggles, and it'd be like, like pick up this and move it over here, and then pick up this and, turn this and so on, right? So you could see everything kind of displayed in augmented reality. And, but it's, I mean, intuitively, you'd be like, well, that must be super effective, right? And it is. I mean, you can kind of immediately see the productivity benefits for it. And that actually wouldn't be super interesting. It's just like, you go from having to scroll through a booklet to, having it displayed like this. Yeah, of course, that's more effective, right? Yeah. But the key question was, we call it sort of the level of processing effect. We did things like, we gave them, first of all, we compared augmented reality versus, just pen and paper instructions in a randomized controlled trial, and showed, okay, the augmented reality goggles lead to much more productivity right away. But then what happens when you take these things away? So what happens when you take the pen and paper instructions away, and what happens when you take the augmented reality goggles away? And the key is, like, if you take the pen and paper instructions away, people still perform well. You have a standard learning curve. They actually get better, slowly better over time. You take the augmented reality goggles away, people have a massive decrease in productivity. It actually takes them quite a while to sort of even see any kind of learning curve effects there. And they're also really stressed out. And so then we ask them, for example, we also ask them like for improvement recommendations, like how could you make this process better? And the people who got pen and paper instructions actually came up with pretty good ways of improving things. The people with the goggles, not at all, because they didn't internalize the process, right? So it was a fun field experiment. I think really, really useful to understand technology implementation and, not only the benefits, but also some of the possible pitfalls, right?
All right. So maybe we can transition now to, maybe you can give me some examples of companies that are changing how they operate and responding to this AI environment, how they're having to adapt their traditional business models. What have you observed?
If you think about supplier negotiations, right? Walmart has, 50,000 suppliers. And you probably have to negotiate with all of them on a yearly or every other year or something like that. It's a lot of people you just need to do supplier negotiations with. And you know what? Most of them are probably not all that critical, right? Most of them are fairly straightforward. So sure, you can outsource that essentially to a generative AI, right? And so you start using these chatbots essentially for negotiations. I think that's turning into reality already. The call center stuff I talked about earlier is reality. There are call centers who already operate that way. So I can see sort of some use cases, right? But I also think a lot of times when people want to fall back on showing the benefits of AI, they really fall back to plain old analytics and machine learning, where they show like, oh, we implemented this great algorithm, and it helped us, detect, the breakdown of machines faster, or it helped us forecast this better, and so on. But I think that's still where, for me, the big success stories are. And these more classic analytics and machine learning applications, rather than in the generative AI space.
So how do you see job roles in operations and technology management evolving and changing in response to AI? And what does that mean for our emerging business badgers who are majoring in operations and technology management? What skills do they need?
Well, certainly kind of understanding of models and, both of the sort of more traditional models and algorithms, right? So how do forecasting and inventory algorithms actually work? And then, towards machine learning, how do we use kind of standard sort of tree-based methods, et cetera, in prediction? And then towards actually sort of large language models and the foundations of AI, right? How do transformer models work? I think this is all very, very important to understand the technological landscape, right? And then you need to have a solid sort of business understanding of what actually happens when we all of a sudden ramp up orders with our suppliers. What happens in our supply chain, right? What do our customers want? How much can we actually sell if we deliver faster, right? Does that actually lead to increases in revenue? What's the tolerance that our customers are having? What do they care about? So sort of the business understanding, the understanding of the technological landscape, and the understanding of the underlying data structure are, I think, three fundamentals. And I believe that we address all three of them in our program. So
it is a great program. All right, Enno, let's finish up with a fun one. If you could offload one task or responsibility to AI and robotics that you would never have to do again, what bot would you invent?
Oh, okay. The great bot, for sure. I think one of the least favorite things that I have in teaching is grading. Particularly since you and I, we teach large scale classes, right? If you have to grade for 150 people, if you have to grade for 10 people, it's fun, but if you grade for 150 people, it's just it's a massive effort, and it becomes very, very repetitive. So I find it and you still want to do a good job, you want to give people good feedback, but it is really, really a challenge. That's a part of my job I would love to hand over to AI.
Yeah, so as you were talking, it made me think about one of the things that I find frustrating about grading larger classes especially is one of the reasons we grade is to understand what the students are understanding and get a sense for that and what they're not understanding. And that can be really hard to do when you grade 150 essays over 3 days. I don't remember which students are understanding when which ones aren't. But recently I've noticed that when I purchase things or when I'm looking at things from Amazon, it will create this nice summary of the product reviews. So I don't have to go through and read all the product reviews. It will say, generally speaking, people who bought this really like the color, but it runs big, or something like that. And I would love to have some sort of like general evaluation for like this group of students really caught on to these ideas, but isn't struggling in these situations, and this group of students, and like some sort of like summarizing so I could get a sense of like where the comprehension is and where I have failed as an instructor to teach things, or there's a misunderstanding.
No, that's actually a very good point. And we always try to do that, right? We try to, after an assignment, we either send out the message or we talk about it in the classroom. It's like, here are the things that I've noticed that did not go quite as well, and then we address it, right? But it would be nice to already have a draft of that prepared by AI. And I think that's actually relatively easy to do. So I'm looking forward to that, and I hope we'll get good tools for that reasonably quickly.
We focus our energy on some more enjoyable parts, like talking to our friends on a podcast.
Exactly.
I know I've learned so much from you sitting with you today about operation and technology management, about AI. I really appreciate you taking the time to share your knowledge with me and my students.
Thank you so much for organizing this, and this has been a real pleasure. And to all the students out there, do great things.
Unsupervised is brought to you by the Wisconsin School of Business. It's written and hosted by Katie Gaertner, with sound editing and production by Derek Schneider and Billy Kardaj.